What's the next thing you remember after you're being in the hospital? Do you remember any time in the what hospital did they take you to?
St. Vincent's in Green Bay.
Do you remember being in St. Vincent's?
No. I remember very briefly I was in the ambulance and they said, "What hospital do you want to go to?" And I said St. Vincent.
How long were you in St. Vincent's?
10 days.
Were you in a coma after you woke up after the
No,
surgery?
I never went into a coma.
So after the surgery, you actually were awake.
Mm-hmm.
But during that 10-day period you were there, you don't remember any of that.
Oh, I do. I was in, excuse me, I was in ICU for four days, and once I had woken up from the surgery, I remained conscious. And I have a degree in counseling, so I could tell every time the nurses came in and gave me a mini mental status exam to find out if I knew who I was and I knew where I was. And so I scored completely out of the stage of coma.
So, and do you remember the day of your surgery? Do you remember that day of your accident, being in the hospital?
No, sometime very late that night, the next memory that I have is opening my eyes and seeing two people in white, which were my doctors, and one or two other family members that I could not identify.
How old are you?
65.
So you were 62, 63 when this happened. And do you have a continuous memory then after the next day?
Yes, I do.
So you remember most of the ICU stay?
Yes, I do.
And you were in ICU just to monitor and because of the severity of your surgery and your injuries?
Correct.
What happens after you leave ICU?
I was on the neuro ward for 1 day, and then I went into rehab.
Okay, so what did they do on the day you were on the neuro ward?
It was basically the same thing, except I suppose I could receive more visitors.
And you remember the mini mental status exams?
Yes, there's a part of my brain that absolutely did not work. It was black. And there's another part of my brain that was, I think I was struggling to identify things that would keep letting me know that I was alive and that my brain could still function in some way. So I kept journals, and I have a little part of my journal that's called Jokes from ICU, and that was one of them. I was thinking, you're barely conscious, and yet you're aware that they're doing this psychological inventory on you.
When did you start keeping that journal?
I believe when I started rehab, so that was within a week of my injury.
If I understand the time, you were in ICU for about 4 days, the neuro unit for one, and then you went into the rehab unit?
Yes.